Hey everybody, Mike Doretto here to talk to you about the difference between generalities and your specific interaction, or basically making an excuse to not take action because of some general advice versus the reality of the interaction when you actually get face-to-face. So what am I talking about here? Most of the advice you get is general advice, even when it's coming from us. I mean, especially when it's coming from me. I make general statements all the time. Like with all this meeting and approaching people, you've got one person that's going to tell you it's 10 different steps. I'm going to tell you it's 2 steps. Your basic technique: approach, compliment, question. Approach, compliment, question. But we need to be sure to not take those general pieces of advice, sometimes stereotypical advice, and take it too seriously. Generalities, they help us set our expectations over multiple instances. So if I were to be going to a new location and someone tried to warn me and say, hey, in this spot, people are just generally less friendly. They're less open to being approached by strangers. If somebody told me that, then I would say, okay, I would put that in my head and go, all right, well, if I approach people and I get the cold shoulder, I know that it's not me. I know that it's the location. They warned me about this, and there you go. So that can help me sort of set my expectations and avoid feeling bad about myself if I'm getting the cold shoulder. But it doesn't mean that I shouldn't make an attempt to approach. It doesn't mean that I should change my personality or change my style or try to, worry about this generality that people are talking about. I'm still going to go up and I'm still going to be curious. How is this situation going to go? Is the stereotype I heard true? Is the generality true? I'll give you one example. So in general, people say that, with age comes wisdom. The older that you are, the more experience you have, the wiser that you are. But as soon as I finish saying that sentence, I'm sure you can think of a million people for whom that does not apply. That's a generality that's also logically sensible, but you can look around and find a million examples of people that are older than you, but somehow less mature, less experienced, all kinds of stuff. Also, the context changes the generality. So somebody might say like, oh, okay, all people in this particular town are closed off and cold-shouldered. So if you approach them on the street, expect it to not go well. But then we could meet those same people in a different context, and they could be the friendliest people in the world.
And it's funny because Germany is one of the countries where people really are up in their heads a lot. Like, German people need to fucking relax. You know what I'm saying? Like, you guys need to fucking loosen up.
Bier mehr werden die Hormone weniger, doch wie knutscht bereits Gas geben, Jungs.
So the context changes the generality as well. Pretty much any generality we can start to chip away and undermine very easily, because all we need is to find a handful of examples, of counterexamples, to prove that the stereotype is not the rule. I'll give you an example from my life and my advice specifically. I tell people all the time, if you are over the age of 24, try not to date anyone under the age of 24. And the reason I say that is because, this is number one, it's Western advice. I'm basing things on like, okay, we go to high school, then we go to college, then we have graduate school around these different ages, and people are just still figuring themselves out for much of that time. So I tell people, like, if you want to avoid the extra work that could potentially come with dating somebody less mature than you, then in general, date people 24 and older, or older than 24. Now, sounded pretty passionate about that advice, right? But I'm standing here to tell you I'm a hypocrite. When I was 28, I saw this gorgeous young woman. I didn't know how old she was, but come to find out she was 18. So 6 years below that limit that I give people, that general advice that I give people. But in the specifics, in the actual individual interaction between her unique characteristics and mine, we ended up proving ideal for each other, and I'm now married to that woman. So if I were to follow my own general advice in that specific instance, I would have missed out on a soulmate. Really what I'm trying to convey here is just because there's an unlikely scenario does not give you an excuse not to try. You might look at a situation and go, okay, well, let's see. In general, women that are in the middle of working, surrounded by a bunch of people, and blah, 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 give yourself all the excuses for why it's not going to work out well. And in general, those are probably true. If you were to do that approach time after time after time, and you dragged it out over a long amount of time, you could probably see that statistically, you're right. Statistically, it doesn't work. But statistics don't necessarily have to. That statistic doesn't apply to your single attempt, your one individual instance. In that individual instance, you still have a chance of it going well. So you still need to try. It costs you nothing. That's the thing about this stuff. When it comes to interpersonal relationships, making friends, finding girlfriends, all that other kind of stuff, it doesn't really cost you anything to go up and talk to somebody. You don't have to pay a fee to go introduce yourself to someone. So there's no reason not to try in a situation like this. Remember, it's a numbers game, and there's no reason to quit a numbers game if it's free to play.
So much potential, and you've resorted to fantasizing about Conan Ginger Junk O'Brien.
He is funny.
He looks like a carrot, honey.
Who looks like a carrot? Hi. Who looks like a carrot?
Conan O'Brien. My friend, Hannah here thinks he's sexy.
That's weird because I think that your friend Hannah is really sexy.
Oh my God. You did not just say that. How old are you?
What are you, a lawyer?
A little bit.
Come on.
I know.
You are? Is she?
Gonna be.
Don't you think you're a little old to be using cheesy pickup lines?
Objection. Leading the witness.
So in summary, guys, you can't predict the specific interaction that you're going to have with a person, even if it's surrounded by stereotypes. Even if you've got tons of advice telling you, in general, X, Y, Z, question it. Be curious. Go make that attempt. If you think the person's interesting and you want to go up and talk, go talk. Then, when you have the person in front of you, you might be surprised to see how easy the interaction goes. It's really going to depend on the associations that you remind this person of, and vice versa. So you might be functioning off of some general advice, but when we get down to the specifics, it gets too complicated for you to really predict what actually is going to happen. So get out in front of people, try, be curious, question all the information you've been given, but you can still use it to set your expectations. So while I'm not going to hesitate to go approach those people in the place that they told me was unfriendly, I'm not going to get depressed if I find that I strike out repeatedly. But I'm sure, even in a situation like that, I would find at least some exception to the rule. People are so diverse, no matter what population you're looking at. Variation is the norm, whether it's psychological, physical, personality-wise, but humans are very different and complicated, and we all have our little mix. And while we follow a lot of general patterns and a lot of similar behaviors, when it comes down to the unique individual, predictions can fly off the rails. So don't let any of that stuff hold you back. Get out there, be social, be friendly, and be ballsy.